So welcome back from lunch, everyone. We will get started. I think I know almost everyone here, but for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Michael Thompson. I'm the NCAR Deputy Director and currently the Interim President of UCAR. UCAR is the management organization that manages NCAR and HAO on behalf of the National Science Foundation. And probably most proudly, I'm also former HAO Director. So very happy to be here and part of the celebrations of the 75th anniversary. So today it's my great pleasure to welcome and introduce Congressman Perlmutter. Congressman Perlmutter is currently serving his 5th term representing the 7th Congressional District in Congress. The Congressman serves on both the House Science, Space and Technology Committee and the House Financial Services Committee. So both very important committees for all of us. In particular, I would call out that Congressman Perlmutter serves on the Space and Energy Subcommittees of the Space and Technology Committee. He's also chair of the New Democrat Coalition Energy Task Force. So, Congressman, we are very grateful for your strong support of the Colorado labs and for the scientific research that we all do here in our various labs. And we're grateful also for you taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and say a few words to us. So I would like to invite everyone to join me in welcoming Congressman Perlmutter.
Michael, thank you very much for that introduction. Thanks for inviting me to speak with you right after lunch. It's always a great time to speak to people right after lunch. And so I feel very fortunate to be here. I'm a University of Colorado graduate undergrad and law school, not a science major, but somebody who is very much a fan of science and of the things that you do. And I'm very proud of Boulder for being the place that has developed and blossomed so many scientists, whether it's in earth sciences, planetary sciences, solar sciences, whatever it may be. And it is a draw for so many people to come to Colorado. And I've got prepared remarks, and Jeff, I'm going to stick to those, but first I'm going to go off script. So Colorado today is the #1 destination for young people 25 to 34 to move, to start into business, to start a family. And part of that is because this state and this city in particular, with the help of all of you, are about the future. It's about what's out there, what's next, what can we expect. Young people are very much about the future and about imagination and invention and innovation. And we are the #1 place in the country for those young people to come. And that only benefits us for decades to come. And so I want to thank you. As you know, part of my job as a lawyer, I was a trial lawyer. I was an advocate for 25 years before I was elected to Congress. And so I'm there. My job is to speak on behalf of my client. And when I get to speak about Colorado, when I get to speak about our laboratories, when I get to speak about the people who populate those laboratories, it is the easiest sell in town. And I feel, particularly humbled that you've asked me to come speak to you today. So what I like to do is read from remarks that Jeff has helped prepare and then answer questions that you might have, because as I was preparing for this talk and thinking about magnetospheres and things like that, all I could think of was Men in Black 3. And Men in Black 3, you may remember, there was this guy named Boris the Animal who was a very bad character, and he was a Bogladite. And the only thing that kept the Bogladites from attacking Earth were the Van Allen belt. And so that's the sum and substance of my knowledge of what you all do on a daily basis. So now I will turn to the prepared remarks. But I should say, I was watching a science show last night just by pure happenstance, and it was a discussion of how magnetic fields have affected the maturation of the Milky Way, of our galaxy, and the fact that these magnetic fields have probably protected the galaxy from attracting more gas and dust that would then create just one superheated giant star. And so I am very appreciative now of magnetic fields in a way that I never was before. So good afternoon, everyone. Now I'm going to my prepared remarks. Thank you, Michael, for that introduction. It's great to be here in Boulder and celebrating the High Altitude Observatory's 75th anniversary. As many of you know, earlier this year I was able to secure a position on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and it really was a blessing for me to have been placed on that committee. I've served on the Financial Services Committee since I began my time in Congress in 2007, and my background as a lawyer was a litigator for generally representing banks, real estate companies, insurance companies, business litigation. And so on the Financial Services Committee, I sit on the Stock Market Committee, which is called the Capital Markets Committee, and I also serve on the International and National Monetary Policy Committees. So I've been doing that for a while, and that's all fine and dandy, but my passion has really been about science and about the future and about exploration, which is what you all get to do pretty much every day. And so I feel very fortunate to have been appointed to that committee. I take every chance I can to talk about our laboratories, whether it's NCAR or the National Solar Observatory or the National Renewable Energy Lab. I mean, Colorado, we actually enjoy, on a per capita basis, more laboratories than any place else in the country, whether it's agricultural labs up in Fort Collins at CSU to labs down south of Denver. We are very fortunate to have those laboratories, and we're very fortunate to have great institutions of higher education. School of Mines, CU, I'll say something nice about CSU. CSU, one of those great institutions of higher learning, although I'm a buff and not a particular fan of the Rams. But with the NOAA laboratories, NIST, the energy laboratories that we have, the agriculture laboratories, we really are in a place nobody else in the country enjoys this kind of scientific community that we have on a per capita basis. Since sitting on the committee beginning in February, I continue to be impressed by Colorado's leadership in aerospace and weather research. At almost every hearing we have, there's at least one Coloradan testifying in their area of expertise. And just next week, Dr. Baker from LASP will be testifying in front of the committee. I'm embarrassed to say one day we had a panel of 5 scientists, and one of them was mentioned as having some, living in Boulder or something like that, and I just said, oh, it's so great to have, you on the panel as a Coloradan, to have this connection to Boulder and to the community here. And then what I found out later is 2 other guys did as well. On that panel of 5, there were 3 Coloradans, or three scientists who had some connection to this community. And, much of the community owes its position to Walter Orr Roberts, who really began all of this great accumulation of mines here in Boulder, Colorado. Having started, I guess, up at Climax, and I was up by the mine just a couple days ago, to then come to this area with the backing of the national scientific community, the University of Colorado, really is what built this. And the fact that these institutions of higher learning are here today. So in the Congress and on the Science Committee, I serve on the Space Subcommittee and the Energy Subcommittee, but it's a smaller committee, so you get involved in a whole variety of issues even outside of your subcommittee's jurisdiction. So I get involved a lot on the Environmental Subcommittee as well as the Technology Subcommittee. We've had a few bills come through our committee. A couple of them I think are very good and favorable to science. Another is, in my opinion, kind of a setback. So let's start with the one that has in the past been very positive for science and technology, and that's the America Competes Act. And I know a number of you here today rely on federal research dollars and the priorities of our science research agencies, whether it's NOAA or Energy or even the Department of Defense. Earlier this year, the Science Committee marked up the America Competes Act, and it also passed the House in May. The bill authorizes funding levels and policy for the National Science Foundation, the Office of Science and Technology, NIST, as well as DOE, ARPA-E, and the Energy Efficiency and Research, our Renewable Energy section of the Department of Energy. Unfortunately, instead of building on bipartisan Competes Act that we passed, the bill that we passed in 2007 and 2010, this bill was much more partisan, and it was an attack, in my opinion, on critical science matters, particularly on the earth sciences. The bill made severe cuts to geosciences in particular, and this is one of the areas that Colorado really is a leader, so it hurts us. Additionally, the bill politicized research grants from the NSF and the National Science Board award process. Lastly, the bill severely cut energy efficiency and renewable energy programming in the Department of Energy by some $500 million. Even though it passed the House in May, it did so without one Democrat, and it lost 23 Republicans. So overall, it has probably no chance to get through the Senate. And as the Senate works on its version of the Competes Act, it seems to be much more bipartisan in nature, will provide much better funding for this pure scientific research as well as the applied sciences that DOE is working on. My number one goal in my assignment to the science, space, and technology has been to really showcase our laboratories, whether it's NCAR or NREL or the laboratory at the School of Mines and at the Federal Center that deals with earthquakes. That's number one. Number two is to continue to promote our aerospace industry, and that's both the scientific and laboratory side. You know, we work very hard to get those of you who are here from the National Solar Observatory to come join this community here in Boulder, and we're very happy that you did and that your numbers are growing daily. So, as I started out this talk, the reason I want to do that, and I think our entire delegation, both Democrats and Republicans, really want to see this happen, is because it's very future-oriented, and that's the outlook of the people that live in this state. Democrats and Republicans don't see eye to eye on every issue, that's obvious, but I've been able to work with a couple of Republicans, one of whom has been actually out here recently, Randy Hultgren from Illinois and Jim Bridenstine from Oklahoma, to pass meaningful and important bills. First is the DOE Lab Modernization and Technology Transfer Act. That was with Representative Hultgren. The bill expands eligibility for DOE pilot programs and enables lab directors more flexibility when working with the private sector. The second is House Resolution 2261, which is the Commercial Remote Sensing Act. This is with Representative Bridenstine, and the bill begins the work to update the Department of Commerce's licensing process for remote sensing satellites. Additionally, further work on weather data and commercial space development is part of what I'm working with Representative Bridenstine on as well. I see the opportunities as Congress, small but meaningful bipartisan bills which can pass the House and will be part of a package that I think the Senate will put together. And I look forward to working with researchers and organizations in this room to help make the case for federal research dollars and showing how we can fuel American innovation. I'm happy to take questions, whether it's about politics or sort of federal policy or the goings-on in the Congress, both the good things and the not-so-good things. But it's an honor to be able to address you, and I'm very happy for the Van Allen belt, and I'm very happy that there are even bigger ones out there taking care of the galaxy. So. Yes.
Fran Bagel, excuse me, Fran Bagel from the University of Colorado here in Boulder. You mentioned government labs and so on, but obviously I'm concerned about the universities. When you talk about young people, we have a lot of young people, students coming in, and they're worried about security and if jobs. And what I'm worried about is not actually the number of civil servant positions in the government labs, but innovative research projects at the university that employs students and young people and training them to provide the workforce. So what do you say to those young people?
That's a very good question. So I have a daughter who is a CU undergrad, worked at NREL, stepdaughter, CU undergrad, worked at NREL for a year, just got her doctorate in physical chemistry from the University of California, San Diego. So she just graduated with that and received her doctorate 2 months ago. And obviously, she's somebody who is concerned about exactly what you just brought up. So it's a family matter for us as well. There are very different philosophies and ideologies in Washington right now, pretty much polar opposites on some things. And when it comes to investing, in my opinion, investing in the science and the research, whether it's through young people or experienced, technicians, whoever they may be, we need to do that so that the United States continues to be as, on the cutting edge to advance science. Because we don't know what benefits all that science is going to bring to us over whatever period of time. I mean, one of my, I talked about Men in Black, now I'll show, I'm a Star Trek nut, okay? And you just don't know what's happening next. I mean, Captain Kirk used to go, computer, all right? I can do that same thing with Siri and my phone today. So, for me, I'm all about investing in higher education and in scientific research, both pure research and applied research, so that not only are you on the cutting edge and just coming up with new theories like my stepdaughter did just by removing an electron from an atom of ruthenium and see how quickly, was that me? Oh, sorry. See how quickly the atom stabilizes. And what does that have to do with nanotechnology and time travel and who knows? And also applying it, which is kind of what they do at NREL. But NREL, EERE, got clobbered in this most recent budget proposals. So we're in a fight about what it means to invest in the future, and the president has been pushing hard on these things, but there are people who resist that tremendously in the Congress. And I got to just speak, being able to come and talk to all of you, talk about the good work you're doing, whether it's at the University of Colorado or at a laboratory or wherever it is, then that gives me examples to say, look, we need to continue to move forward on this. We can't just retrench and hope that, the private sector does it, but oftentimes the private sector might do it, but the risks and the costs usually keep them out of it. They need to apply the science to be able to sell a product or a service. So I'm with you. It's a family matter. I'm working on it. but we've got a lot of people to persuade in Congress right now when it comes to the budget that this, in fact, these are great investments now and for the future.
You have time for another question?
Sure. I mean, I'll stay here all day and talk about movies or whatever you want.
Perhaps I should ask your staff about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Kevin, and then Joan.
Thanks for coming. Kevin Trinboth at NCAR. I'm a climate scientist. You referred to the American Capetes Act, and so this is hitting climate science in particular, but geoscience in general, in NSF very badly. And yet, as you, I think, pointed out, we're in the business of research and gathering better information, better sources of evidence on how to advise what actions should be taken. And so it seems to me that the way that this has come down is that they're actually shooting the messenger in many respects. What do you think can be done about that?
Well, and that's a great question. So they are shooting the messenger. You all are trying to catalog precisely what's going on, and then from what's going on, predict what might happen tomorrow or next week or 10 years from now, so that we, policymakers, can make good decisions. Because when we pass a law, we're passing a law that, you know, affects the future, how we manage our affairs in the future. So I guess I would say you're in an area where there are potential landmines all over the place. Say, you know, climate's changing, it's getting hotter, the seas are rising, or whatever, and we think these are the particular reasons or culprits for such a change. The fossil fuel industry has been, you know, one of those areas saying, look, we're putting too much pollution, carbon into the atmosphere, and it's affecting our weather and our climate long term. So that industry then takes offense and starts spending money and trying to elect people that are more sympathetic to its positions. And that's kind of where we are politically right now. You know, whether it's the Koch brothers or some other organization, you're just the messenger, but on the other hand, the message has affected a particular industry and group of people. What we found, and Jeff will attest to this, Jim Bridenstine from Oklahoma, very conservative guy, but smart and willing to discuss things. Some are not willing to discuss anything. He's willing to discuss things. And we found, just in the way we talk to each other, if we talk about weather and we don't talk about climate, we can actually get something done. And I saw, just going and taking a look at the NCAR website, about some of the things you're doing to try to have a, hour by hour prediction of heavy rainfall. And this town definitely needed something like that 2 years ago at about just this time. That we were going to get a cloud that came and just was going to sit on top of Boulder and North Jefferson County for 4 days and get rains like we've never seen before. He and the Republicans that I work with on the committee really do understand, the effect, the potential dangers to lives, as well as the effect on commerce. And if we can find the right vernacular, the right terms, the terms that don't, affect somebody in a way. That's part of my job as a politician. Your job is to be the messenger, do your best. My job is to find a way to find common ground, to advance the ball. Sometimes you advance it farther than at other times. So when I saw on the website this focus that you have, at least one of your things that you're working on is this immediate forecasting through taking all this big data that you have and you're running, through the computer up in Wyoming, and try to, really zero in on, hey, we can do an hour by hour prediction that there's a lot of weather coming right here. We can get help from the Republicans on that. I know we can. Other things, it gets a little more testy because people who support them don't support the message, don't like the message. And that's just the nature of politics right now. So Mr. Hansen over here introduced himself to me earlier. He went to school with my dad, who was at the University of Colorado. I'm just going to tell a quick story on my dad. And so my dad wrote for the Silver and Gold at the university. He was a character when he was up here, very successful in business, and he turns 90 in about a month. And my dad was at 2 years ago, basically, when we'd had the big rains, and then there was the government shutdown. I'd come home from D.C. for the weekend because we weren't doing anything, and we were watching the Broncos play the Jaguars, and the Broncos were way up. I mean, we were just winning that football game. Great. But my dad turns around on the couch, and he's got this terrible look on his face, big grimace. My dad, even though very successful in the construction business, a very liberal guy, you know, ordinarily those two things don't go together. And he watches MSNBC a lot and a lot of those kinds of shows. And he turns around, he says, this dysfunction in Washington, he says, this is just terrible, and, you know, I can't believe how bad you guys, you know, how bad it is back there. And my mother gives him an elbow in the side and says, Leonard, we're here to watch football. You know, knock off with the political talk. So he turns around, and Broncos score again. He turns around. This time he's got a smile on his face. And so I'm like, okay, good. You're happy that we scored again. Now, I don't know how many Bronco fans in the audience. Not too many. But anyway, I am. And I say, he goes, yeah, you know. And so to you, Mr. Hansen, he says, you know, I was born in 1925. And my family and I, we got through the Depression. You know, and the country did. And the country and I and the family, we got through World War II and Vietnam, and we did good things. We put men on the moon, and, you know, he goes through a whole, basically from 1925 to 2013. I said, that's great, Dad. He goes, you know, after thinking about it, this dysfunction in Washington, this too shall pass. We said, God, that is just, you know, so wonderful, and the, you know, Dad, that's just great that you think that way. He goes, I only hope it passes before I do. So we are at a time where there are some major conflicts on, you know, just the value of research, the value of investing in our kids and their education, the value of building infrastructure, the value of the laboratories. But if you work hard at it and you find common ground, and it may be that we're not going to be looking, you know, we don't say, okay, 50 years from now, this is what's going to happen to the planet, but we find a way to take all that data that you're accumulating, fund it, you're able to precisely predict what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of the big storm that's headed towards Boulder, Colorado, we will have advanced the ball. We'll have found some common ground. And we can do that. And I've already found with a guy like Jim Bridenstine that there is that common ground. So I hear you about being the messenger. I'm sorry for that. It's a difficult time when it comes to these ideologies. But as my dad would say, this too shall pass. And we'll advance things better than we are right now. But you got to go through, you know, the tussle just along with everybody else. Does that answer your question? That's a long answer to your question.
Congressman.
No, go ahead.
Kevin, do you want to come back on that one?
Well, I wonder, I mean, it really relates to the whole attitude, I guess, especially of the Tea Party and the Republicans to science and evidence-based information, and it's almost as if they don't want information. And I wonder how you can change that.
I had a feeling that's where you were going. So what I'm trying to say is my job is to find, if I can find, a connection to a guy like Jim Bridenstine. And I think we found it on weather forecasting and taking the things that you all are developing in the laboratory and all of the assets that it has, call it weather forecasting. It may help you as you're developing your climate change models and stuff like that, but it's something that he needs right now for Oklahoma that's been so hard hit by flooding, by tornadoes, by whatever. And he and his party are in charge of the House of Representatives and the Senate of the United States. And so my job is to know, is to find ways to assist you and assist your mission up here with guys who are generally antithetical to it. But my job is to find that common ground with them and convince them. And he, to his credit, came up here. He met with UCAR. He met with a number of aerospace scientists up here, as well as planetary scientists. And he wants to know. And that we just got to find those guys, convince them that this, whatever it is we're working on, makes a difference today and for a long time, and just do our best to get it done. But we are in a difficult period right now. And it's politics and it's power. All right? I mean, people don't like to talk about power very much. But this is about power. And power comes in those votes. And the voting blocks today are generally resistant to more science and more research until you convince them otherwise.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We truly appreciate you coming to spend some time with us on this auspicious occasion, and truly appreciate also your skillful advocacy with both friend and foe in Congress. Yeah, don't take my book.
Anyway, happy birthday, everybody. Congratulations. Keep it up. It's not easy sometimes. Just keep at it. It'll change, and this too shall pass.